Alright, so if you've been following along and you watched my last video, you know that I got a new front drive shaft in for the YJ. While I'm in there, I'm going to replace the four-wheel drive shift indicator that's in the transfer case. In a YJ from the factory, it's vacuum. For a TJ, it's electronic. So we're going to swap out that sensor, take out the vacuum one, put in the TJ style, the electronic one, run a couple wires, delete some vacuum lines, tie them in. Then I'll have my four-wheel drive shift indicator light back on my dash since I no longer have the CAD up front. Alright, so here's some of the parts we're going to be using. Here's the shift sensor from, this is a Crown part. See the part number right there, made in USA. I'm also going to be using a Weatherpack connector from Painless. I've seen some other guys, they're using, I don't know what kind of connector they're using, but it's not the right one, but they're kind of cutting this little notch in or melting the notch in. This is the correct connector for this. This is actually a two-piece kit, male and female, from Painless, but it was on sale for $6. Here's the part number right here if you need that. Made in USA. But this is kind of like a standard Weatherpack connector kit. So we're going to be using this guy, and you see how this one has the little cutout right here on this side? That's needed. You need that for this style of connector because there's a little key on this side. So the reason they do that is so it can only be plugged in one way. It doesn't really matter for this application, but we're going to use the correct parts. So we got a new Weatherpack connector here. I'm going to show you how to pin this if you don't know, or crimp it really, it's not much of a pin job. Got some vacuum caps that I've had kind of laying around forever, some wire loom, and a couple of rolls of 14 gauge wire. Using 14 gauge because that's what I have on the shelf. So those are the parts we're going to be using. We'll get up under the Jeep and I'll show you where that connector is located, and I'll kind of show you what I've been doing under the hood for the shift sensor, or the CAD. I still have the CAD connected, but it's zip tied up. I didn't really delete it yet because I wanted to do it right and do it once. So I've got my belly pan off and my front drive shaft off for this because I'm swapping that front drive shaft. You don't need to do that to make this swap, but it does make it a lot easier to get to that sensor and route those wires. But let's take a look under the hood first. I'll show you what I got going on. So if you're familiar with the YJ, or you've seen my last couple videos, this is the front axle disconnect vacuum actuator for the front axle. Whenever I deleted my two-piece front axle, I just pulled this up into the engine bay here and zip tied it to the grill support, just because I knew I was going to do this job and I didn't want to try to do a couple things here and there. I just wanted to do it all at once, and this way I didn't have any vacuum leaks or anything, and I could still drive the Jeep around. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete this vacuum line right here completely. We're going to strip these wires back, probably way down there next to the frame somewhere. Put two new wires, run it to the transfer case sensor. I think there's 4 vacuum lines going to the factory sensor. We're going to delete all those vacuum lines. Have the 2 wires plugged into this for that new sensor, and then that'll tell me when the transfer case is in 4-wheel drive. And once we get all those vacuum lines and everything deleted, we'll cap off everywhere that they plug into. Alright, so we're under the Jeep now, and you can see with the front drive shaft gone and the belly pan off how much room we have to work. This sensor right here is what we're replacing. You see all the vacuum lines coming out of the top? Those are all going to be gone. It's just going to be 2 electrical wires running out of there. So we'll get that, we'll get these vacuum lines disconnected, and then we'll replace that sensor, plug everything in, hook it up, and should be good to go. Alright, let's get this sensor swapped out and get these vacuum lines deleted. Oh man. Alright, so just pry those 4 vacuum lines off. I'm just going to throw them away basically. I got a 1 in, what is this? Got a 1 1/16 socket and a flex head ratchet. And now we're going to get that old sensor out of there. Probably should have sprayed that area off with some brake clean or something, but it's actually not too dirty. Try to avoid getting dirt into your transfer case if you can. Okay. There's the old sensor. The new sensor doesn't come with an O-ring. You can reuse the old one if you want. Mine's in pretty bad shape. It looks pretty squished. So I just grabbed a new one here. It's a little bit thicker, but it'll be perfectly fine. We'll get it torqued in there real nice. The new sensor is 7/8 or 22 millimeter, I think. Where's the hole? There it is. So you got a little bit more room in there. Just something to keep in mind there. Okay, new sensor's in. Yeah, I want to start getting rid of these vacuum lines. So those 4 that I pulled off are in their own section of loom here. So I'm just going to go to the other side of the transmission and pull those out from the passenger side. It's a little difficult to see what you're doing in here with the camera, but on the passenger side now, I'm just going to grab these vacuum lines and pull them over. You see them there. And then they go up. And that wire loom goes up to the top of the frame and then inside the engine bay. So we'll get in the engine bay and look down on top of these. Okay, so from the engine bay looking down, here's our CAD vacuum lines. And if you look in here, there's actually it splits. The 4 vacuum lines Y out. So it goes from 4 to 2. 2 of the vacuum lines go into this loom where your center axle disconnect is. This will be on the axle, obviously, if you haven't touched anything yet. The other 2 branch off, come up here and go into these guys. And this one's actually just kind of hanging out, not doing anything. The other one goes all the way around top of the firewall. It goes in right here. So from all 4 of those vacuum lines, we're deleting 4 lines, and the only cap we're going to need is right there. Everything else will be gone. In the loom that has your CAD disconnect vacuum lines, it also has the electrical connector for the original sensor. If you follow that out, it actually comes out right here and goes into this connector. So what we could do is actually de-pin this connector and then attach our new electrical wires that are going to our transfer case switch, attach them into here, and we'll still be able to plug it in and unplug it, just for serviceability and cleanliness, and keep that there, and we won't have to solder anything or crimp anything, or use butt connectors. So I'm going to get in here and I'm going to start just pulling out these vacuum lines, and just going to clean it up in here quite a bit, I think. Looks like there's only one zip tie down there. I'm going to have to get back under the Jeep, it looks like, and get that zip tie cut, but that's it. I got that one zip tie cut down there. And I should be able to just pull this up. Alright, so here's where that was the transfer case. Now it's all the way up in here. You can see right here where see how it tees out? It goes into these 2 separate looms. So if you wanted to, you could reuse this loom or one of them, and when you route the electrical wires. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to be using a smaller diameter loom than this. I don't need all these I don't need room for 4 vacuum lines. I just need the room for the 2 smaller wires. So I'm just going to cut out all the old stuff, put in brand new stuff that's the correct size, route it the way I want it. It'll be the exact length that it needs to be, and it'll just look a lot cleaner. So I'm actually just going to pop this line off here, pull that out, do this, and I'll pull the original lines out of the CAD, pull that out, and then the only thing left is this connector here, which is for the new sensor, or for the sensor. Unpack that, or unclip that, come around to the driver's side. I just got this line here, I might have to cut it. Oh, no, I don't, it pops out. So it will pop it out of that. Over here, pop it off of the top of this T-fitting, and I could probably delete this T-fitting altogether. I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm not even going to need a vacuum cap. So it originally went into here. Now the only thing we have is this little guy, which is for, I believe it's for the fan control, HVAC, inside the cab. So what we can do now that we no longer need this T-fitting, careful you don't break anything. Oh, that might have been the source of my vacuum leak, so that's interesting. Awesome. So now all we need is this little guy and about a 2-inch, 1-inch section of this little hose right here. So I'm going to pull this off. And this little section of hose was on the intake down here, and I'd been searching. I thought I might have had a vacuum leak, and I'd been searching. Couldn't find one, but this has a split in it right here where it was attached, so that might have something to do with it. So we'll just cut that off. Shove the not split part back onto the intake. Shove the HVAC controls into that. Alright, I'll throw a zip tie around this too just to make sure that doesn't leak. It's pretty loose, but I think it'll be okay. The better way to do this would be to replace this little nipple right here with one that's the correct size. I might do that eventually. This is definitely going to be okay though, and it's going to be a much better system than having all those extra vacuum lines. Alright, so there's what it is all laid out. Look at all this nonsense we're getting rid of. All these vacuum lines, not going to need any of these. All of these vacuum lines being replaced or eliminated. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. Since all the vacuum lines are taken care of now, and I just need the one electrical connector or electrical wire to go from where this used to plug in to where this used to plug in at the transfer case, I'm just going to make my power wire this long. And I was thinking about it some more. I was going to depin this connector and reuse it on the other one, or reuse it on my new wire so that I could just plug it straight into the harness and still have it be removable and serviceable. But I think what I'm going to do instead, I don't actually have any extra pins for this style connector, so I'm just going to cut these wires right here and connect them to my my new wires that are going to run down to here with the new Weatherpack connector on. So let me get some wire pulled and we'll start putting some connectors together and get this cut off. Okay, so here's all my pieces laid out here. I need the connector, 2 little silicone gaskets, and the 2 male leads. So I don't need these. Alright, so here's the original connector I cut off. I'm going to cut one wire a little bit shorter than the other, and then I'm going to use those newer style, I guess they're the solder, the one-step solder, and heat shrink connectors all in one, whatever. I'm going to try those out and use them on here, and they'll be staggered a little bit so that it won't be such a bulky section of the loom there. Okay, so here's my connector. Let me go ahead and strip these. And I am going from a slightly smaller wire. I think this is like a 18 gauge maybe, and I'm going up to a 14, but it'll be okay. Won't be that big of a deal. Alright, so here are my connectors that I'm going to use for this part. They're this style. They got the solder in the middle and the heat shrink around them. Just heat them up and it solders and heat shrinks in one step. Okay. Let's strip these. And since this is just a switch, it doesn't matter which colors you go with. For what, I'm just going to keep black on black, and I'm going to make the red go to the, I guess it's yellow with a black stripe or black with a yellow stripe. The wire is so corroded, or not corroded, but just so discolored from age that I can't really tell, but it'll be fine. Okay, so I got my first one ready. See how that's in there? Two wires are together. Alright, there we go. Let's heat them up. Okay, there we go. Those are connected now. And it's probably not necessary, but I'm going to put another piece of shrink tube over these just to protect them a little more, but that is not going anywhere, and that is definitely heat shrinked and soldered right there in the center. So that's pretty cool. I probably could have soldered, or I could have heated it up a little more, but I don't want to push this these old wires too far. Alright, there it is. That side's done. Alright, let's do the Weatherpack side. So, I actually have a kit from Eastwood that has all the, like an assortment of connectors and centerpieces and stuff, and the crimper, but I'm actually out of the two post crimpers, or two plug crimper, or two plug connector. So the painless one wasn't that bad though, and it's a really nice quality piece. So I actually went over to the Jeep and put this in, crawled under it just to make sure the length was good, and it looks like we're actually about 4 inches longer than we need to be, which is okay. I can make do with that, or I can make that still look neat, but I think I'm still going to cut a couple inches off of this. Alright, so I'll cut this about here, maybe here. There we go. Alright, so for Weatherpacks, all you gotta do, slip the little silicone piece over your cables, or over your wires. Careful you don't tear this little silicone seal piece. This is the only thing keeping it weather tight. Alright. Now we'll need to strip the end of the wire a little bit. Now the only thing that you need to do for this, pull the silicone back up to here, slip this in, and there's two sections that are going to be crimped. There's the big ears that get crimped around the lip of the of the little silicone piece, and there's a smaller set of ears that crimp around the actual wire. And you could probably do this without a crimping tool, but I already have the tool, and yeah, it's going to make a much better connection. Well, I think I forgot to hit record, but I got my connector put together, so here it is in all its glory. I guess I probably should have paid more attention to the camera. I could have swore I was recording that, but once you get them crimped on, those little ends crimped on, you know, you just push them through the back of the connector till they click, then you fold the latch down, and then you have a weather-tight, reliable, but still serviceable connector. So here's my cable, here's my wires. I'm going to get them wrapped up with some loom, get a little bit of tape on the ends of them just so that loom doesn't split open, and get it put in the Jeep. Okay, there we go. There's our connector and our wires. This Dorman wire loom leaves a lot to be desired, but that's typical Dorman, I guess. But all right, let's get this plugged in. All right, let's feed this in down. The install will be the exact reverse of removal. Plug it into the factory connector. Click. And let's see, I want to throw a zip tie on it somewhere. I'll throw a zip tie on this. Let me get it routed and plugged in on the other end, and then I'll zip tie it up. It's kind of dark, but let's see well enough. So right here up in this area is where that factory zip tie was. I'm going to reuse that same spot and route it over the axle, or over the frame, over the transfer case. There's a couple of other lines over here. I can zip tie it too as well. Alright, we're back on the driver's side. Here's our new wire. Got the dirt knocked out of it. Here's our new shift indicator sensor. We'll plug it in just like that. Alright, let me get some zip ties thrown up in there and we'll make sure it works. Alright, I got it all zip tied and tucked up out of the way underneath there. Let's see, I want to zip tie this guy. Find some strain relief to this. I'll put him right here. Alright, there we go. We got a fully functioning, very clean install with new wires that are both weather resistant and totally replaceable or serviceable should they ever need to. Alright, let's check our work. I'm not going to start it since I still need to put the transfer case skid plate back on, but we can at least turn it on and give it a shot. Boom! And just like that, we have our light back. Alright, there it is. Another successful Jeep project completed. While I was under there, it's been a few days since I started this. I actually jammed that front drive shaft video together real quick and then kind of waited around until I got my new transfer case skid bolts in. I got them from Crown. They were pretty expensive for some bolts. There's the part number if you need new transfer case skid bolts, but I got all 6 of them put in, got that transfer case drop out of there, which was 1.5 inches, not just an inch. And I have no idea why it had that much transfer case drop in there. It's not lifted that high. A buddy and I were talking about it a couple months ago, and we couldn't figure out why they had put that in there. So not only is a lot of vacuum lines deleted, and that sensor is working great with the factory connector ran through to that new TJ style sensor, but it's it's got a lot more clearance in the belly now too, which it needed. But it's amazing how much of a difference it makes. Look at that, so much more room now, so much more room. And the drive shaft angle, you probably can't see that very well, but it's not bad. It's totally doable. You can see how shiny it is right here from how much further it was shoved up in the slip yoke. But this will all be going to, I'm definitely going to do a slip yoke eliminator and get a Tom Woods drive shaft for the rear. I'm kind of waiting around to do that just because I've got so many other little projects going on at the moment. But that'll definitely be done. So up next, I'm going to get the rock rails put on. Unfortunately, it's going to affect the way this flare extension right here works. I'm actually going to have to eliminate that little piece, and it's going to make it look really strange. So I might switch these fender flares over to TJ style as well. I'm not sure yet. It's going to give me a lot more room in the rear. And the tub is already chopped from those extended flares. But for now, it's not a big deal. I'm just going to run it as it is once I get those flares on. But eventually, I'll probably go with TJ flares. Alright, so I hope you found this useful. Got another project coming up with the front too, so I got a lot going on. But next up, rock rails.